On this spot, on June 12, 2010, a troop of anomalous Girl Scouts was neutralized by the operative referred to as Mr. Between the Walls. Investigations suggested the Girl Scouts were part of a hostile incursion, indicating the incident could be classified as an occurrence of inhuman on inhuman violence.
I have everything you need for a great spaghetti dinner. All in one package, nothing to add. Chef Boyardee's complete spaghetti dinner with meat sauce.
File number 265B. June 12, 2010. Event record.
On June 12, 2010, local residents were stunned to witness an altercation between a troop of anomalous Girl Scouts and the government operative referred to as Mr. Between the Walls. Investigations suggested the Girl Scouts were maybe not normal little girls, with witnesses describing them as eerily identical, with short blonde bobs, sharp bangs, and amber eyes that lit up right before they hurt someone. So perhaps they were not just creepy little kids, but were in fact a manifestation of Vancouver's ongoing hostile incursion. The infection. From the other side. This would indicate the incident could be classified as yet another confusing occurrence of inhuman on inhuman violence. Strange myths and bedtime stories bumping up against each other like some creepy pasta version of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That comic made by those two old weirdos who got locked up for distributing mad ideas and warping the minds of the young.
Case study.
Agent W003, Mr. Between the Walls.
Transcript of interview with
Lawrence J. Goober.
This all started with Subject X013. That was a frustrating experience. We had them from 1994 to 1998 and subjected them to some very interesting experiments. This had been an extension of the original foregone studies, though of course that guy was a madman. We were modern scientists, we assured ourselves, cutting up children in the name of progress. So yeah, X013, we extracted portions of their mind and regrew fresh cerebral tissue. So the physical memories were gone, fully removed, but somehow traces would still remain buried deep in their subconscious. What this meant was they'd never truly trust us. We made them too well. Their ability to intuit motives, combined with the subliminal memories of what we'd done to them, they didn't know, but they'd always suspect. And that meant they'd never fully trust us. Based on that failure, the whole group of test subjects were set to be destroyed. But of course they found out and escaped. That was a dark day. A lot of good people lost their jobs, and a few lost their lives as well. Me, I was fined a month's salary and sent to sit in one of the isolation cubes for a couple of weeks to appreciate the gravity of what we'd done. Of course, it took years for me to truly understand the pain I caused those people. Hell, it took years for me to even recognize them as sentient beings. Anyway, there were some positive results that came from the testing, so from there we went to experimenting on soldiers. By 1999, we'd established the SRP, the Series Rhyme Protocols, a program by which the seemingly random cerebral mutations could be cultivated and used to enhance human operatives. We fed 7 men into that program. 5 were ground into a fine, meaty paste. The 6th went missing, and the 7th became the entity now known as Agent W-003, better known as Mr. Between the Walls. Mr. Between the Walls was originally a government espionage employee, but after being subjected to the series rhyme protocols, what emerged was something quite different. This agent is classified as Code, Caged Tiger, a designation for operatives considered as dangerous to their handlers as they are to their targets. Highly capable, highly destructive, and highly trustworthy, in the sense that you can trust them to turn on you at the perfectly wrong time. Supernatural abilities were present, but with them came the dreaded supernatural mindset. The concept of the supernatural mindset comes from a theory proposed by head Siam R researcher and notorious fruitcake Jacqueline Frost. In short, it proposes that exposure to post-human capabilities reflect a singularity condition which humans, by the nature of their cognitive existence, cannot comprehend. They're not better than us, she proposed. They're just bigger than us, in the same way that a cube is bigger than a square, or a high-res photo is larger than a low-res one. They're just more. They see what we cannot, perceive what we cannot, except maybe on drugs, like really good drugs, not that stepped-on crap they're selling on the street these days. We had Mr. Between the Walls locked up in a Class 9 liminal cage, utilizing the children's play area of an abandoned fast food restaurant located beneath the city in an abandoned SkyTrain tunnel. But eventually, he had to be released. There was work for him to do. I wasn't there for that part. That's the only reason I'm still alive, you understand? Sure, I knew what he'd do to the others, or at least I had a pretty good idea. Although, to be honest, none of us really knew. We had no idea how bad it could get. Those little demon Girl Scout things, Troop 888, they'd been haunting the East Side for months, chewing the fingers off of elderly folks and making the police look like a bunch of scared kids. Something had to be done. So I tasked one of my subordinates with the job, and she got one of her subordinates to lead a team down to wake up Mr. Between the Walls. It's a complex ritual to get anything out of those liminal cages. There's a saxophone track that has to be played backwards in a minor key, and a series of chants that were originally weather reports read on a late-night cable feed. When Mr. Between the Walls did finally emerge, it seems he put on a bit of a show. He didn't kill everyone in the room. He left one alive to get his assignment from. But the rest, it's one thing to say he diced them up, like how you might dice potatoes or an onion, but to actually see it is something else. Several entire human bodies reduced to small cubes of meat and bone. Haunting. I was part of the cleanup crew for that scene. Because even when you're in charge, you've still got to get your hands dirty. And then Mr. Between the Walls was loose on the city streets. I'm told he tracked down the troop fairly efficiently, and according to all reports, the actual conflict was quite spectacular. Theatrical, you might say. They put up a good fight, whatever those things were, but in the end, they all fell to his blade. His cruel, curved sickle. It said that his blade burns the body and the soul and causes nightmare visions of a future destined to grow out of our present, like an ulcerous blister rising up from healthy skin. Anyway, he got the job done. But when we sent a couple of clerical workers to collect him back up, They returned to us, disemboweled and without hands. Not sure if there's a word for that. Dehanded. So now, he's just out there, doing what he wants, which I guess is mostly slipping around inside the gaps between buildings, listening in at our conversations. What's he like? Look, I'm telling you, we can't say. If that Dr. Frost lunatic is right, then that thing's brain is as far beyond us as we are from the mosquito drinking from our veins. He looks like he's wearing a cheap business suit, but that's really just a shell. His body grew around itself while he was kept down in the dark under the city. His face is plain, featureless, smooth like a pale pink egg. They say he traded his facial features for forbidden knowledge somewhere out in the back rooms of reality. Of course, nobody knows how he eats or even where his voice comes from when he talks. Creepy, mouthless bastard. Same for his eyes. It makes no sense. We still give him jobs from time to time. We'll post a note on a public bulletin board in a complex code, perhaps disguised as a flyer for cooking classes, giving him the details on the identity of the target. Within 48 hours, we'll receive a parcel at the home office. A simple plastic container containing the target's fingertips, heart, and a single eyeball, usually the left. And that's how we know the job was done. He's never asked for payment or made any other attempt to communicate, though he does usually show up at the staff Christmas and midsummer parties where he monopolizes the karaoke machine with Fiona Apple songs and insists on impressing junior staff with close-up magic tricks that only work about half the time. He'll kill you as soon as he'll look at you, and if you even speak to him, there's a good chance he'll cut out your tongue, just as his version of a joke. But you can't argue with results, and he sure gets work done. Creepy, faceless asshole. I'm sure he'll come for me one of these days. When I least suspect it,